This afternoon, we continue in the hadith that we began with 2 weeks ago. And we continue in this advice, which, as we'll recall, was words of guidance given by Allah to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And you'll recall the hadith began where the Prophet has been quoted as saying, Awsani Rabbi bitis'in. That my Lord has advised me, has given me guidance on 9 different points. The first week we looked at the fact that the guidance given by Allah to the Prophet was to have ikhlas, to have sincerity, to be people of integrity, both in private and in the open. As he said, that he was advised to have ikhlas, fi sirri wal alaniya. That we should never be people who are two-faced. That behind the scenes, when we're at home, when we're private, we're one thing with Allah. And when we come in the public limelight, that we put on a facade or a show. So our sincerity has to be at all times, wherever we find ourselves. Point number 2 that we talked about last week was where the Prophet was advised to have justice, to be fair, in 2 times, right? Fi ridha wal ghadab. At times when we are happy with somebody, where we're on good terms with somebody, and when we're angry, when we're not on the best of terms with someone, that we don't let our emotions drive how we deal with someone. There might not be a friend, they might be an adversary, but we're still obligated to deal with that individual with the concept of justice and fairness. And we should never let our hatred for a people or a person or a community or our personal grudges or vendettas ever detract us from being fair and just with anybody that we deal with. Today I continue in this hadith. We're going to look at the third quality, and arguably as we go through this hadith and as we progress, you're going to find that these qualities become more and more difficult to implement, right? And today's is one of those where the challenges become much more greater, I would say. And because of the length or the depth that I wanted to cover, we'll probably take maybe 2 weeks to cover this portion of the hadith, as we will for the rest of it. But we'll begin it today and see how far we go. So the third quality which the Prophet has been advised by Allah to implement, and obviously as an extension that we are now invited to, is where the Prophet says, al-qasdi al-faqri wal-ghina. To have moderation in times of poverty and in times of wealth. Right? So there's a concept here that we look at it, how to be moderate in life. Moderate in the sense of economic, our economic life, our financial planning, our financial spending. What does Islam want from us in terms of having moderation? Now, one of the things that we begin with at the outset is that Islam as a religion is defined in the Quran by being a religion of moderation. Right? Allah calls us ummatan wasata. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ ummatan wasatan. Right? So there is a concept in the Quran that Muslims, Islam as a religion, if we were to compare and contrast Islam to other teachings that Allah sent down, right? The teachings of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, the teachings of Prophet Isa, which are named as Christianity and Judaism. But these teachings of previous prophets, if we were to sit and analyze them, their fiqh, their sharia, their practicality, their how they live the religion on a daily basis, and if we were to compare that to Islam, we would actually see that we have a very easy religion. It's very balanced. I'll give you just one example. Right? You look at, and you'll have to go home and do your own homework, but you go home and study in terms of Judaism, their rules of the Sabbath. How strict their rules are on the Sabbath, meaning from Friday Maghrib until Saturday Maghrib, they can't use appliances, they can't drive cars, they can't use any modern forms of convenience. Those who are Orthodox from the Jewish community, they have a very stringent set of rulings, right? That's one example for their Sabbath. Then you look at the Christian community, traditionally in Canada, even if you are as old as I am, you'll remember back in the day in the 70s and 80s in Canada, we didn't have a concept of Sunday shopping. The shopping centers, the malls were closed on a Sunday. You couldn't even go to your local department store because everything was shut down because it was a Sabbath, it was a holy day. And so the city, the country had to come on standstill. So you have two extremes. But then what happens is Islam comes on the scene, and look at today. Many of you have come from work. Our young boys here and the young girls have come from school. You'll listen to the khutbahs, you'll pray the salat, and guess what? You'll go back to making money. You'll go back to school. Because Islam gave us a balance. It wasn't that you can't do anything in terms of worldly, enjoyment or requirements. It was you balance. You have time for money, you have time for education, and you have time for worship. So Islam came and said that when it comes to moderation, in spiritual practices as a community, we are balanced. When it comes to our worldly pursuits, Allah doesn't say don't make money, just be a religious person and pray and fast. No, go and earn money. Earn as much money as you can from the permissible means. But there's a balance. Social conduct, we don't completely disassociate with people. No, we have interaction with people of other religions, of the opposite gender, but within moderation. And consumption and spending, what I want to look at today based on the hadith of Rasulullah, is that we will see that even when it comes to spending money, either on ourselves or on our religious community, on the faith, there is also a need to have moderation in what we spend. But one of the questions which I'll try to answer today, and we'll continue this, as I said, next week, based on this hadith, is what is moderation? Because every one of us, if I was to say to you, when you go shopping on Black Friday last week, or Cyber Monday, or Boxing Day, you can go and shop, but be moderate. Everybody will have a definition of what is moderation. Right? For somebody, moderation will be $200. For somebody else, it might be $20,000. Right? I'm just going to buy that 200-inch television. It's only $80,000, and that's my moderation. I'm not going to spend more than that. Right? So everybody would have a different definition of moderation. And as we'll see in this discussion, as I try and unpack it today, we might find that in life, based on our intentions. So let me bring us to chapter number 17, Surah Bani Israel, also known as Surah Al-Isra, verse number 26. I want to review two verses, but I'll keep one verse, 27, for next week. Today I want to look at verse 26 of chapter 17, in which Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وآتي ذا القربى حقه والمسكين وابن السبيل ولا تبذر تبذيرا. Allah says very poignantly, and give to the near of kin. You have family, you have siblings, you have your parents, you have extended members of your family. They're in a needy situation. They have maybe financial problems. A lot of us are going through financial issues and difficulties in the era that we live in. And so Allah says, and give to the near of kin, whatever their due is, their right, and to the needy, and to the people who are traveling and are stranded on a journey. But then he gives a requirement. He says, وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا. Do not squander wastefully. Now there's a lot to unpack here. This word that Allah uses, tabdhir, it only comes up 3 times in the Quran. Twice in this verse 26, and one time in verse number 27 of Surah Al-Isra. But what does it mean? Well, Allah says, وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا. Do not, as the translation says, do not squander your wealth wastefully. So the word tabdhir comes from the Arabic word badr. Badr literally means to throw seeds when you want to plant something. Right? So we live in a beautiful part of Canada where we have farms, we have the orchard behind us in the center. Maybe at home, in the springtime, you'll plant crops in your backyard, you'll grow fruits or vegetables. And there will be times where you'll take the seed of what you want to grow, or you'll take the sapling, you'll dig a hole in the ground, you'll be very precise of how far down you'll dig the hole. You'll put that sapling in the ground. Maybe you're growing tomatoes or whatever it is, but you'll be very careful of following the instructions of how to grow that plant. Other time, no, you want to make your grass greener, so you'll buy the seeds and the fertilizer, and you'll just throw it everywhere. You'll have maybe a machine to distribute the seeds of grass and the fertilizer, but you're not going to be sitting there putting one seed of grass on the ground. No, you'll just throw the seeds, and wherever they land, the grass will get greener and it'll be fertilized, and hopefully by spring or summer, you'll have a much better looking lawn. Or you're just going to throw the seeds. So when Allah says, وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا, commentators say that this is one understanding we should have, is you don't just throw your wealth away aimlessly. As sometimes it happens, right? You hear this saying in English, this guy's just throwing around his wealth, right? He's not worried where he's spending it or she's spending it. So Allah says, وَلَا تُبَذِّرْ تَبْذِيرًا, and don't be like that, that even in goodness, even when helping your family, even when giving support to your parents, your siblings, that you just throw your money, you just squander it to them, you give them maybe more than they need, more than they deserve. Even in charity, in support of others, there needs to be balance. Now, from there, let me move on and say this, that when scholars talk about tabdhir, they say that this most often relates to money, our financial interactions. And they say that tabdhir can even be when you spend an amount of money, no matter how small it is, but in an inappropriate way. So you might say, oh, it's only $10, what's the big deal? Well, even that $10 can be considered as tabdhir because of where you're spending it. It might not be israf, it might not be extravagant, it's not a large amount, but it could very well be considered as being a squandering of your wealth. And on the flip side, conversely, you could spend a large amount of money on something and it would not be considered as tabdhir. And it would not be considered as israf or extravagance. So let me give you two examples and I'll conclude this sermon for today with one salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When it comes to clothing that we go and buy and wear, I was reading a study. So there was a survey done by University of Waterloo out in Ontario, my hometown. In 2023, the University of Waterloo conducted a survey on the amount of wastage of textiles, of clothing, of fabric that people buy in Canada and they waste it. And in this study by University of Waterloo last year, they said on average from their research, Canadians wasted over 500 million kilograms of fabric in 1 year. And they broke it down by how many t-shirts. That's like 25 t-shirts, 12 pairs of pants, 10 blouses. They had an entire list of how much that could be per family based on average spending habits for Canadians. And they said out of that 500 million kilograms of wastage, 85% ends up in a landfill. Not that we send it to a third world country or that we help homeless people. No, we literally throw it in the garbage and it fills our landfills, which are already full to the brim. And they said in this report, one of the estimates they gave to understand how much is 500 million kilograms, because that's a huge number, right? What does that mean? They said that means every second of the day, one garbage truck, those big garbage trucks that come by our house once a week, that's the equivalent of filling one garbage truck every second of the day. Not every week, every month, but every second of the day, having one garbage truck full of clothing and fabric and wastage going to a landfill. Now you can just maybe picture how much that is that's going into the landfills. And it's going into it because of people like you and I, well, hopefully not you and I, but people out there who are going towards tabdhir. We are squandering, we are wasting the resources that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. So let me give you a practical example of what could be considered tabdhir and what is not tabdhir, so that we can keep away from it and have, as the Prophet said, the qasd, that balance in spending, whether we have wealth or whether we are in a difficult situation. Spending excessively on designer clothing, designer handbags for our sisters, or even men. We have these man bags now. I'll see guys with a Louis Vuitton bag for a few $1,000s. Right? Now, buying designer clothing or having designer clothing or accessories is not haram in and of itself. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't buy good clothing or good accessories, But the question is are you buying it to show off and showcase your wealth and your ability to buy? Or is that something that you find is a need that you have in life? You could probably do good with a much lower priced item. But again, it goes back to intention. So at one level, tabdhir could be that you buy something simply to show off your wealth and status in society. But not being of the level at tabdhir could be you buy something that's expensive, but you buy it for the right reasons, because you know when you buy whatever it is, that you're not only buying the brand name, but you're buying a quality product, and it's not going to rip, it's not going to break down in a few months. So you're going to spend a bit more at the beginning to save expenses in the long run. Right? So this is why I say, brothers and sisters, that we should not judge people because they have good stuff. Right? Another example, let me move on, is about technology. Right? We have people who every year they have to have the latest phone. Right? iPhone 15 comes out, next year the 16 comes out, and you say, I have to have that, or I need that new Samsung Galaxy. Why? Well, now it has a 4K Retina display. It has a new button to take pictures with. It has this, it has that, it has a terabyte of space. Well, do you need that? I know I don't need it, but it's the newest device. I want to have the newest technology all the time. I always want to be at the cusp of the best that's out there. Now, that could be considered to be tabdhir. Again, and we have to personally, I'm not here to tell you, you have to think about it, and can I justify it? But that could be a level of tabdhir. Because is it something I need? Is it something that is required for me? On the flip side, you might say, well, you know what? I'm going to go out, I need to buy a new phone this year, just as an example. And I could either buy a low-end Nokia or Motorola for $200 from Costco, but it's going to break down, and in my profession, I need something more reliable. So I'll go out and buy whatever it is, whatever high-end phone, because I know it's going to last me 2, 3, 4, 5 years before I need to upgrade. And my job is such that I need to have something that's reliable. I travel out of the city, I travel out of the province, and so I need something that is going to carry me along. So that's why I say that it's personal. We have to look at ourselves, do our own soul searching, and realize that is what I'm about to buy. Whether it's a handbag or a pair of shoes or a pair of sneakers or high tops, or whether it's a phone or a computer or a camera. Am I going towards tabdhir? Am I going towards wasteful extravagance? Or am I going within what I need based on my own personal requirements? And let me say this, and I'll move on, is also if you see somebody with something that you think is expensive, don't always presume that they've spent money on it. I've seen this one time, an individual I knew, a scholar, he had a very nice car. It was probably in the $80,000, $90,000 price range for the car, and online people are leaving comments, oh, he's a sheikh and he's driving around this expensive car, and they're homeless people, and how dare he's probably siphoning the homes from the community. And little did they know that this was given to him as a gift from the community for his decades of service to that community. They got together and gave him a gift. Right? So rather than us judging people by what we see, we need to realize there are so many things behind the scenes that we don't think about, we don't know. And so just because somebody has something nice, don't think that they've gone and siphoned money from a community, or they've earned wealth in an illicit way, and now they're money laundering it in this way and showing off. No, there are times where community members will gift, or a parent will gift something to their son or their daughter. And so before we become judgmental, we realize that no, that is a reality, that could be the situation in that particular instance. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I'll end with this last point about this hadith where the Prophet has been told to practice this balance and moderation. Right? How do we understand it? Again, we'll look at it more next week, but one of the thoughts that came to my mind was even this example of in acts of worship. I mentioned in the beginning that even in acts of obedience to Allah, we have to have moderation. And there's this story, although some scholars debate the authenticity of it and whether the event actually happened, but it's in major books of ours, so I'll mention it, that one time a companion of the Prophet named Sa'ad is doing wudu. And he's at the bank of a river, a flowing river. MashaAllah, here in this province, you have beautiful streams and rivers and lakes and waterfalls. And so imagine the Prophet sees Sa'ad, he's making wudu, and he's using more water than would be needed to make wudu. Now, he's not in the middle of a desert. He's at the foot of a bank of a river that is flowing freely, so there's ample source or supply of water, but he's using more water maybe than that was needed. And the Prophet said to him that, don't make israf, don't be extravagant in your usage of water. And the companion says, O Messenger of God, I'm at the bank of a river, it's flowing water. What do you mean, using too much? Right? It's imagine if you go to Niagara Falls, or you go to Shannon Falls towards Whistler, or you go to Bridal Veil Falls near Chilliwack, and you stand under the falls for 10 minutes doing a ghusl. People aren't going to you're using too much water. You'll be like, look how much water is coming from Niagara. There's no israf, it's just going down. But the Prophet said, no, that even there could be israf. You could be doing too much. Maybe my thought about this example where the Prophet did this is, maybe he's trying to create a conscious mindset in the believers, right? That we realize that, there are consequences for our actions. Right? Today, you and I, we came to the center, we made wudu. Did we say, well, you know what, mashallah, Canada and in BC, we have an ample supply of fresh water, so I can keep the tap running for 4 or 5 minutes. I can take my 35-minute ghusl for Jummah, not a big deal because we have ample water. Right? But maybe the Prophet wanted to get us to realize we have to be consciously aware of every time that we are doing any act of worship or anything in life even. We should never think, well, there's so much water, I don't have to worry about it. Right? I'll end with this, that we might think in the summer when the fruit trees are growing behind our center, right? There are literally, if you've seen it in the summer, there are literally thousands of apples and pears on those trees. Would you walk up to one tree, take an apple, take a bite and throw it away? And then walk 2 more feet, find another apple tree, take an apple, take a bite and throw it away? You could say there's thousands of apples here. What's the problem? But no, there is a problem with that. Right? And we have to look at that for all aspects of our lives, brothers and sisters. That are we going to extravagance in anything? Even the permissible, as I said, even giving in charity, supporting our family, we have to do it with moderation. We have to be consciously observing what we're doing in every aspect so that we can make that a part of our lives every single day. As I conclude, we ask Allah, as we conclude this first sermon, to give us the ability to realize the wisdom and the beauty in the words of our beloved messenger. We ask Allah to give us the ability to live in the sunnah of our beloved Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhum salam. We ask Allah to make us of His sincere and dedicated followers and those who are devoted to the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhum salam. And we ask Allah to allow us to see the time of the return of our 12th Imam, and that through our conscientious actions of following the Prophet, we can be the followers of Imam al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif.